I used to believe that justice, like a river, would always find its course. That truth, eventually, would prevail. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? The kind of thing you tell yourself to sleep at night, especially when the world feels a little too dark. I held onto that belief tightly, like a child clutching a favorite blanket, until I came face to face with the most powerful man in my company. Until he tried to silence me. He underestimated me. He didn't know I'd been preparing for that exact moment. For a confrontation I hoped would never come. For a very long time. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage and truth. Your support keeps us going. My name is Karen Mitchell. I'm 42, and for the better part of 15 years, I've been an internal auditor at Wilchrist Solutions in Chicago. Wilchrist is, or was, a big name in financial consulting. The kind of place where ambition hung in the air like the scent of expensive cologne. I wasn't one of the slick, client-facing types. I was a numbers woman. A believer in the stark, irrefutable clarity of a well-kept ledger. Transparency wasn't just a buzzword for me, it was a creed. My boss, the man at the top, was Russell Gaines, the CEO. Russell was the epitome of corporate charm, smooth-talking, impeccably dressed, with a smile that could disarm a rattlesnake. He was a regular feature in business magazines, often lauded with a catchy moniker that always made me roll my eyes in private, the Prophet. People bought into it, though, for a while. Even I did. He had a way of making you feel like you were part of something grand. Something successful. It's easy to get swept up in that kind of energy, especially when the paychecks are good and the company's star is rising. But the thing about numbers is, they don't lie. They don't care about charisma or magazine covers. And one Tuesday afternoon, while sifting through the quarterly expense reports, a task most people found mind-numbingly dull but I found strangely soothing, I stumbled upon something that pricked at the edges of my carefully ordered world. A loose thread, and I, being me, couldn't resist pulling it. It started small, almost innocuously, a series of payments flagged under external consulting fees, not unusual in a company like Wilchrist. We used consultants all the time. But these were different. The sums were substantial, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Consistently wired to a company I'd never heard of, Apex Strategic Solutions. Curiosity piqued. I did a quick search. Apex Strategic Solutions had a P.O. box address and no discernible online presence beyond a bare-bones website that looked like it was designed in 1998. Red flag number 1. I dug deeper, cross-referencing invoices, payment authorizations, and internal memos. The authorizations were all fast-tracked, often with minimal oversight. The descriptions for the consulting services were vague. Boilerplate phrases like market analysis or strategic development. Red flag number 2. My unease grew. This wasn't just sloppy bookkeeping, it felt intentional. I spent late nights in the office, the glow of my monitor the only light, fueled by lukewarm coffee and a growing sense of dread. I started tracking the money trail, a painstaking process that led me down a rabbit hole of shell corporations and obscure holding companies. And then, I found it, the link, the common denominator in all those shadowy entities. The beneficial owner of Apex Strategic Solutions, the recipient of all those hundreds of thousands of dollars, was a Mr. Daniel Gaines, Russell Gaines' younger brother. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a procedural anomaly anymore. This was nepotism at best, outright fraud at worst. I meticulously documented everything: copies of invoices, bank transfer records, incorporation documents for the shell company, even notes from hushed conversations I'd overheard where Russell had casually mentioned his brother's new business venture. I saved it all to a secure, encrypted personal hard drive, a habit I'd developed years ago. A just-in-case measure that suddenly felt less paranoid and more prescient. My first instinct, my training, dictated I go through the proper channels. Report my findings to the internal legal department. I drafted an email, attaching a summary of my concerns. But something made me hesitate. A flicker of doubt. The head of legal, Arthur Jenkins, was a close friend of Russell's. They played golf together every Saturday. Would he really investigate his buddy impartially? Before I could hit send, my phone rang. It was Russell's assistant. Mr. Gaines would like to see you in his office. Karen. Immediately, my stomach lurched. Coincidence? Or had someone already tipped him off? Russell's office was on the top floor. All gleaming mahogany and panoramic city views. He was standing by the window when I walked in, silhouetted against the Chicago skyline. He turned, that famous smile firmly in place. Though it didn't quite reach his eyes this time. He gestured for me to sit. Then walked over to a polished credenza and poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a heavy crystal tumbler. He offered it to me. I rarely drank, especially not whiskey, and certainly not in the middle of the workday with my CEO. I politely declined. He took a slow sip. His gaze unwavering. Karen, he began, his voice smooth as silk, yet with an undercurrent that made the hairs on my arms stand up. You're a valuable asset to this company. Meticulous, thorough, perhaps a little too thorough sometimes. He strolled back to his desk. Perching on the edge, I hear you've been looking into some of our vendor payments. Apex Strategic Solutions, specifically. So, he knew. My heart hammered against my ribs. Yes, Russell. I found some irregularities I felt needed further review. His smile tightened a fraction. Irregularities. That's a strong word. Karen. Apex provides essential services, highly specialized. Sometimes, the nature of that specialization requires a certain discretion in how things are reported. With all due respect, sir, I said, trying to keep my voice even. The services aren't clearly defined. And the company appears to be a shell corporation owned by your brother. The smile vanished. His eyes hardened. Karen, there are things in this business, at this level, that you don't need to concern yourself with. You're a numbers person. Stick to the numbers that are put in front of you. Don't go digging where you're not meant to dig. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Consider this a friendly piece of advice. Some doors are best left unopened. For your own good. He then dangled a carrot. A poisoned one. Look, Karen, I appreciate your diligence. How about this? You drop this line of inquiry, and I'll see to it that your salary gets a significant bump. A very significant bump. And there's that branch manager position opening up in Naperville. It could be yours. A fresh start. More responsibility. Think about it. Then, the stick. But if you persist with this, well, Wilchrist might find it no longer requires your particular services. I didn't say anything. What could I say? The threat, veiled as it was, hung heavy in the air. I nodded, mumbled something about understanding, and excused myself, my legs feeling like lead. That night, I tried to log into my work computer from home to review my files one last time. Access denied. My email password changed. A notification popped up, an alert from my personal security software. Unauthorized login attempt on my corporate email account, originating from an IP address I didn't recognize. They were already moving to shut me down, to erase the traces, but they were too late. The real evidence wasn't on their servers anymore. The next morning, I bypassed Wilchrist's internal channels altogether. I walked into the downtown Chicago office of the Securities and Exchange Commission and formally filed a whistleblower complaint, complete with a copy of my encrypted hard drive. There was no turning back now. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and felt like the only right thing to do. The retaliation was swift and brutal. 3 days later, a courier delivered a letter to my apartment. It was an official-looking summons. citing an internal investigation into gross misconduct and data misappropriation on my part. I was placed on immediate, unpaid administrative leave. My photo, which had once been on the Employee of the Month board, was now effectively on a wanted poster. Then the smear campaign began. Whispers started circulating through the Wilchrist grapevine. Karen Mitchell was unstable, paranoid, disgruntled after being passed over for a promotion she didn't even want. Colleagues I'd known for years suddenly wouldn't meet my eye. A few, I later learned, were pressured into making false statements against me. Their own jobs threatened if they didn't comply. My corporate email account was permanently deactivated. My access to all company systems revoked. They were trying to isolate me, discredit me, paint me as the villain. But they didn't break me. Because I knew I had the truth on my side. And I had that hard drive tucked away safely in a bank deposit box. More importantly, as it turned out, I wasn't entirely alone. A week into my forced leave, feeling increasingly isolated, I got an encrypted message on a secure messaging app I rarely used. It was from Luis Torres, a guy from the IT department. Luis was quiet, kept to himself mostly, but he was brilliant. I remembered him as someone Russell had frequently berated publicly for trivial things, often making him work late, unpaid, to fix so-called urgent issues that were usually a result of Russell's own incompetence with technology. The message was brief. Karen, I think I have something that can help you. Meet me, usual coffee spot, tomorrow, 8 a.m. The next morning, at a bustling cafe far from the financial district, Luis slid a small, unmarked USB drive across the table. Don't ask how I got this, he said, his eyes darting around nervously. Let's just say Russell isn't as careful about his private meetings as he thinks. Later, back in the relative safety of my apartment, I plugged it in. It was an audio file, a recording of a closed-door meeting between Russell, Arthur Jenkins, the head of legal, and two senior IT technicians. I listened, my blood turning to ice, as Russell explicitly instructed them to deep cleanse the servers, to wipe any logs or records related to Apex Strategic Solutions, and specifically, any trace of my recent access to those files. Make it look like she was never there, and those payments were never questioned. Russell's voice, chillingly calm, instructed. It was the smoking gun. Proof of obstruction, of a deliberate cover-up. Luis had taken an enormous risk. Why? I asked him later. Why help me? He shrugged, a wry smile on his face. Let's just say I don't like bullies. And I really don't like people who think they're above the law. Besides, he added, a touch of bitterness in his voice, he still owes me for about 300 hours of unpaid overtime. We knew this was bigger than just us now. This needed to see the light of day. But the SEC investigation would take time. Months. Maybe even years. We needed to turn up the heat. We decided to leak the entire package, my evidence, Luis's recording, to an investigative reporter at the Chicago Tribune. Someone known for their tenacity and fearlessness in tackling corporate corruption. It took a few agonizing weeks. Weeks where every ringing phone made me jump. Every unfamiliar car parked on my street sent my paranoia into overdrive. Then, one Thursday morning, it happened, splashed across the front page of the Chicago Tribune, in a headline that seemed to scream across the city. Wilchrist CEO accused of money laundering via shell company, whistleblower silenced. Threatened. The fallout was immediate and explosive. Wilchrist stock plummeted. Clients started calling, demanding answers. The board of directors, who had previously been content to look the other way as long as the profits rolled in, convened an emergency meeting. Within hours, Russell Gaines was suspended, pending a full investigation. The FBI, spurred by the public outcry and the now very public evidence, announced their own formal inquiry. The profit had fallen. hard and fast. There was a grim satisfaction in watching it unfold. But it wasn't triumph. It was the somber acknowledgement that a painful truth had finally been dragged into the light. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? The bad guy gets caught. The hero rides off into the sunset. But life isn't a movie. Even with Russell out, the shadows lingered. One evening, I came out to my car to find the driver's side window smashed. Tucked into the shattered glass was a small, typed note. "You'll regret this." Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through me. Was it Russell, pulling strings from the sidelines? Or one of his cronies, trying to intimidate me? I didn't know, but I wasn't going to wait around to find out. I packed a bag, put my apartment on the market, and moved to a small, anonymous suburb, changing my phone number and cutting ties with almost everyone I knew. But even as I ran, I knew I couldn't hide forever. And more importantly, I didn't want to. What Russell and his ilk counted on was silence. The silence of fear, the silence of complicity. I decided I wouldn't give it to them. Slowly, cautiously, I started to speak out. Not just to the investigators, but publicly. I gave an anonymous interview to a podcast about corporate ethics. I began attending, then speaking at, conferences for whistleblowers, sharing my story, offering support to others who were facing similar battles. The media picked up on it. My story, no longer just a local scandal, became a case study in corporate malfeasance and the courage it takes to stand up to it. The pressure mounted on Wilchrist Solutions, not just from regulators, but from the public. They were forced to overhaul their internal compliance systems, to institute new policies on transparency and whistleblower protection, all under the harsh glare of public scrutiny. It wasn't justice, not entirely, but it was a start. It was change. 2 years passed. 2 years of looking over my shoulder, of rebuilding a life from the ashes of my old one. The legal battles dragged on. But eventually, Russell Gaines was convicted, his carefully constructed empire crumbling around him. Wilchrist Solutions, tarnished and downsized, was eventually acquired by a larger, more reputable firm. Then, something unexpected happened. I received a call from a prominent investment fund in New York. They were looking for someone to head up their new ethics and compliance division. Someone, they said, with real-world experience, who understood the pressures and the pitfalls. Someone who wasn't afraid to ask the tough questions. Someone like me. I never imagined that the act of blowing the whistle, of exposing a dark secret, would lead me to such an opportunity. From a pariah, an outcast, to a sought-after expert. It was a strange, almost surreal turn of events. But I also knew, deep in my bones, the true cost of that journey. The truth isn't always a liberating force that sets you free without a scratch. Sometimes, it demands a price. It can leave you isolated, scarred, questioning everything you thought you knew. Standing up for what's right takes courage. Yes, but it also takes resilience. A stubborn refusal to be silenced. And the willingness to walk a lonely road, knowing that even if the world doesn't immediately see it, you're walking towards a horizon where integrity still means something. And that, I've learned, is a truth worth fighting for. This is Revenger Ruby. If you enjoyed this story of calculated payback, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss the next tale of sweet, sweet revenge.